With me now, the human rights defender of the Republic of Armenia, Mr. Arman Tatoyan. Welcome.
Thank you for inviting me.
How do you see your job?
The Human Rights Defenders Institution is an independent constitutional body, and it is vested with a broad mandate. And we conduct our work at two fundamental levels. First, these are individual applications investigation or protection of individuals. And the second level, is conducted at the institutional level. So it is conducted institutionally. We investigate individual complaints. We reveal the systemic problems. We reveal what are the roots for these violations. And then we try to fight against these problems at the institutional level. So, for example, we draft legal acts and send them to the parliament. We send them to the government and start then working with our partners from the parliament and the government.
So it's a very hands-on approach, very practical.
Yes, and we may also prepare an application to the Constitutional Court or amicus briefs to the court, which is again a very important tool for the ombudsman to facilitate human rights protection at the institutional level. Just one example, very recently, within trilateral cooperation between the Ombudsman, Ministry of Justice and the Parliament, a package of laws was adopted and signed already by the President, which is based totally on the monitoring results of the Human Rights Defender, and it strengthens the penitentiary system from human rights standpoint.
So it's a very practical report that you deliver, which is then gives opportunity for other people to act on your report.
Exactly. You are absolutely right, and we always try to be very concrete and practical in our recommendations.
Can I ask you what your priorities are at the moment?
At the moment, we have a number of priorities. First could be probably closed institutions and protection of rights there, women's rights protection, protection of freedom of speech, protection of business, and some other areas.
You talked about closed institutions. What's that all about?
We are the National Preventive Mechanism, so this is the national agency for the prevention of torture, and we closely monitor all closed institutions, and these include prisons, social care homes, psychiatric institutions, and all other institutions where people are deprived of liberty or they can't leave these institutions voluntarily. So we focus our attention, our close eye in these institutions, and then we work with our partners, with our colleagues to eliminate the problem, again, both institutionally and individually. The main issue here, or the main advantage here, is that we very largely use assistance of civil society, independent experts. We may hire a medical doctor, a psychologist, psychiatrist who could visit some institution together with us, and they help us reveal the problem and to approach things professionally, which is very important because then you're becoming a credible source of information for your partners.
And Armenia has a problem with torture
Armenia has a problem with basically conditions that are in these institutions. We have many institutions that are the conditions there are not acceptable, and by the way, they're not acceptable both from the point of prisoners or people who are there and people who work there, because you may have dilapidated conditions in different areas. But the important thing is that I think in our country we have huge progress in terms of treatment towards detainees, treatment towards prisoners, which is very important. But the important thing still is, for example, regime of activities. Very often prisoners have to spend 23 hours in their cells because of lack of social and psychological works with them.
The Istanbul Convention against violence and domestic violence is quite a controversial topic in Armenia. Where are we with that?
The European Convention for the Prevention of Violence Against Women and domestic violence, and there are lots of debates around this convention. You have different opinions. You may have one group that is in favor of the convention because they advocate for the prevention of violence. You have another group which is radically against the convention, and there may be another group which says that we are not against prevention of violence, but we are against this particular convention.
Have they read the convention? Have all the groups read it?
Generally in the society, I see clear lack of information about the convention. That is why it is important first to reveal the provisions of the convention, and now my office is studying the convention, all the provisions, and we are working also with our partners and trying to understand what are the real, and by the way, in cooperation with our partners, from civil society, from government, trying to understand the essence, the real essence, because I think, you know, it goes beyond any discussion that here we have in Armenia an issue related to women's rights and violence against women and domestic violence. These are issues, and thus we have to combat, or we have to fight against these things, to prevent them in the future, which is very important. So now we have to think, what are the mechanisms that could be effectively implemented in the country to prevent this type of violence. And I would like also to particularly stress that very recently we finished an awareness-raising campaign. By the way, it was launched by our office. The purpose was to raise the level of awareness of our society, of our people, on domestic violence prevention mechanisms generally. And you know, these issues, the sphere is very specific, because you have many cases that remain hidden in this area. So that is why for the state it is very important to have clear picture, real picture, because you have here in this area stereotypes. You have many cases when victims of violence would not go to the police because they think that it is senseless. It is senseless because there are cases when the police, you know, convinced the victim to take back the application, for example, or the report, or there was a problem related to the quality of investigation. So that is why we also prepared certain guidelines related to our current legislation, existing legislation, how state authorities, including my staff members as a public institution, must treat victims of domestic violence in order to better protect them.
But how do you see the prospects for actually ratifying the Istanbul Convention now?
The government already has announced that they are postponing the process of ratification. At least it will not be discussed till the end of this year, and they will probably launch the process by the beginning of next year. I think this is the exact time for the society, for the public at large, and for the government, for our office, for all, I think, actors to get better engaged in the area, to have the real knowledge. This is the important thing, to have the informed, you know, consent on some processes that are taking place in the country. So I think I see our role also one of the actors that could help the society, help the government, and all other partners to reveal the real situation. I must say that the Ministry of Justice, which is positive, several times they disseminated information about the convention, about the provisions. I think this process should be continuous, and of course we are also very closely monitoring the process and the awareness raising process that we just finished. The aim, the main goal was again to raise the awareness on the substance.
Right.
This is the important thing. What is violence against women? What are the mechanisms that we, and including the current existing legal mechanisms, and how victims of domestic violence right now, or victims of violence against women, could protect their rights within the existing legal system of Armenia.
You're here now as part of your cooperation with the Council of Europe. Can you tell me about the benefits that has brought you and Armenia?
You know, Council of Europe is among our very important partners. Due to Council of Europe and cooperation with the Council of Europe, we could raise our institutional capacities. We could study experience of our partners in different countries. For instance, I can take our exemplary cooperation with the Council of Europe General Directorate for Human Rights and Rule of Law, which provides us constant assistance related to different issues, to different areas. We have also very good cooperation with the Council of Europe office in Yerevan, day-to-day cooperation. The professional knowledge that the staff has there is very important for us, and the need-based approach. Here in Strasbourg, we keep our very close contacts with the National Human Rights Institutions division in this Directorate General, which helps us again to gain new knowledge and to see what are the current challenges for national human rights institutions in other countries. We also very actively cooperate with the Commissioner's Office for Human Rights, and this is almost a daily cooperation. We also submit Rule 9, so-called communications, to the Council of Europe, European Court of Human Rights Judgments Execution Division, when we monitor whether the country is complying with its obligation to execute general measures of indicated in judgments. And probably one very important, another example, very recently the European Court of Human Rights endorsed my application, motion, and we are now a third party in one of the cases pending before the European Court of Human Rights. This is very important, and I think that it will further help us get better engaged in these processes.